Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, and today we're going to look at some part writing. Actually, this comes from one of the AP Music Theory exam questions that you can get online to practice for the exam. I'm going to walk you through all of the steps and realizing a figured bass problem so that you can rock your next AP Theory exam. Okay, so if you want to pause the video now and take a stab at this and then compare it to mine, now's your chance, because we're going to get into it right now. All right, let's make some music. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is set up the staff. We always want to make a brace or a bracket, and then we do the clefs, add the key signature, and the time signature. If you ever forget what the order of these are, just remember they go in alphabetical order. Clef, key, time signature. Okay, now we're gonna write out the bass line here, copy it from the exam here. So this one has a bass line that's basically moving up the scale all the way up to the 5th scale degree before coming back to do. All right. That's our bass line. We also have the opening chord. In another video, I'm going to show you how to voice that opening chord so you can always avoid parallel fifths, those dreaded parallel fifths. But for now, we'll just copy what the exam question gives us. All right, now let's copy down the figures, and then we're going to take a closer look at those and see what those all mean. Looks like we have a few different kinds of figures in our figured bass here. And let's try to make sure we know what all of these are. If there is no figure whatsoever, like in the first and last chord, well, that's easy. It just means it's a root position triad. The 6, all by itself, that refers to a first inversion triad, which means the bass is actually the 3rd of the chord. So that'll help us when we're doing our Roman numeral analysis. We also have a couple different 6/4s. They look a little bit different, but they actually both mean kind of the same thing here, that they're both second inversion triads and the 5th of the chord is in the bass. All right, 2 others to go. We have the 6/5 and the 7 with a little sharp underneath it. Talk about the sharp in a minute, but the 7 just really means it's a root position 7th chord. And then the 6/5, that means a first inversion 7th chord. So that means that the bass is the 3rd of the 7th chord. Okay, the last thing we need to consider are these little chromatic alterations that are given to us in the figured bass. So we have 2 of them. We have the slash going through the 6 in the 6/4 chord in the first measure here. And anytime you see a slash through a number, it really means that the note that corresponds to that interval above the bass is going to be raised a half step. So in this case, a 6th above the bass. If that's a C, we're going to have an A sharp. In the second measure, with that sharp that's just kind of hanging there, whenever you see an accidental without a number, this is just like kind of below the 7, but it's not like attached to any number. That means it's just the 3rd of the chord that gets shifted. So if the root is an F sharp here, the 3rd is an A, and so it's an A sharp now. All right, now on to some analysis. The key is given to us in the problem, but if we didn't have that, we could easily figure that out. Notice that the bass line begins and ends on B. With 2 sharps in the key signature, that means we kind of have 2 options for a key, a major and a minor, either D major or B minor. And since the bass line starts and ends on B, well, I think B makes sense as a key here. Now that we have the key, let's do the Roman numerals, the Roman numeral analysis. Okay, so this is my thinking here. So we have the first chord, and that's a root position triad, so it's on the first scale degree. That's easy. It's a minor 1 chord, Remember, the Roman numerals show us not only which chord, like which scale degree is the root of the chord, also shows us what the quality is. So I'm going to use a lowercase Roman numeral 1, looks like an I, to show that that's a minor 1. All right, the next one is a 6/4 chord, as we said before. That is a second inversion triad. So the bass note is the 5th of the chord. The way I think about this is I go, if that's the 5th of the chord, I just go down a 5th. I kind of look at it and think, what is a 5th below, in this case, C sharp? Well, the F sharp is a 5th below that, and F sharp is the 5 chord. So this is a 5, 6, 4. Remember, this is actually an uppercase 5. It's a major 5 because of that slash through the 6. That actually makes this into a major triad. All right, next one, we have a first inversion. That is a 1/6 chord. First inversion triad means the bass note is the 3rd. Go down a 3rd from that note, you have a 1. So 1/6. Now we have a 6/5 chord. So 6/5 chord is a 7th chord in first inversion. So just like we did with the 1/6, this is first inversion, so we go down a 3rd from the bass note, E down to C sharp, and that's the root. So C sharp in the key of B minor, that's 2. So this is a 2/6/5. Now, this is a half diminished 2/6/5. And that's because the 2/7 chord in any minor key piece without accidentals, of course, is half diminished. And that's just one of those things that you kind of want to have memorized. Let me know in the comments if you want to see a video on all of the different qualities of all of the different diatonic chords in major and minor, and some ways that you can memorize those. It's really helpful for doing these kinds of problems really quick. All right, now we get over here to the 6/4 chord. Now, if we were just following our system here and we looked at that chord and said, all right, it's 6/4 chord, so it's a triad, it's in second inversion, then we go down a 5th from this because that's the 5th of the chord, and we see that the 5th below that is B, so it's a 1/6/4 chord, right? Well, hold up for a second. I'm gonna call this a 5/6/4 chord, and I know that might freak some people out, but here's the deal. This chord is kind of getting us ready for a 5 chord, and because it really doesn't sound at all like we've reached a tonic chord, it is kind of more functioning as a preparation for the 5. It's a little bit confusing, but for right now, just take my word for it. We're gonna do some more analysis of this at the end, after we've done all of the part writing. So I hope to be able to convince you that actually this chord, even though it kind of looks like it should be a 1/6/4, it's really playing more of a dominant role here. So we'll come back to that. All right, and then we have a 7th root position, 7th chord, and so that's just our 5/7. And then finally, a 1 chord at the end. Cool. All right. So I think we're done. We've done all of our Roman numeral analysis, and we can move on to some part writing. First thing that I like to do when I'm doing part writing is start with the melody before I fill in any of the inner voices. The reason I do this is because the counterpoint between the melody and the bass is actually a really important way in which we get a sense of shape to our phrase here. It's also kind of helpful for narrowing some of the decisions that we have to make later on. So if we make good decisions now with the melody, it's going to really help us when we start adding inner voices. Here's how I'm thinking about this. We start with the 3rd of that chord, and we're moving to a 5 chord, so an FAC chord. Since it's a 6/4 chord, we have to think about doubling, and the way I think about doubling for any 6/4 chord is that we always want to double the bass. Okay, So since we're trying to double the bass here, it looks like that C is right there available. And now we know that our inner voices are just going to take the other two notes of that chord. All right, back to the one chord. And let's just go ahead and put the tonic there in this soprano. Notice for a second here that what I'm thinking of is like using contrary motion between the outer voices. We don't have to do that for every note, meaning that they're always moving in the opposite direction. But contrary motion, we should favor contrary motion. Do it for most of the notes between the bass and the soprano. It's just the best way to make them seem the most independent from each other. All right, now we're moving on to this 2-6-5 chord. So it's a C sharp chord, so C sharp, E, G, B. Good. Well, let's get the C sharp. Why not? Let's take that C sharp, the root of that chord here, and then we move into the 5-6-4. Okay, so yeah, I know it's a little confusing. This chord doesn't have, it's not an FAC chord, as one would expect with a Roman numeral 5. It's a cadential 6-4, so it has the notes of the tonic triad. So it's a B, D, F chord. I'm going to go with the D here, and like most 6-4 chords, we really want to have this nice descending motion. For cadential 6-4 chords, we want to have this nice descending motion, and I see that we're almost to our final tonic. So 5-7, F, A, C, E, and then finally, here we are at our final note. Great. So we've got a melody, we have a bass line, we're ready to do our inner voices here. The most important thing to keep in mind here are the voice leading. We want to make sure that the notes from one chord connect smoothly to the notes of the next. And the voicing, meaning we have to choose the right notes to double. There's some like little rules that we want to follow to make sure that the doubling clarifies the harmony and doesn't draw too much attention to certain tendency tones like the leading tone or the seventh. We don't want to double those because those have some really particular voice leading restrictions on them. Okay, so let's move on here. So we notice that we have two C's in this next chord, so we actually just need the other two notes of this triad for the 5-6-4. So F and A. Look, the best inner voice leading you can do is keep a common tone. So the alto part can sit there on F sharp. And then we have the A. But let's remember that the slash here, so that's that sixth. And so that slash, remember, means to raise the note. Okay, moving on. So remember, voice leading is really important with inner voices. Well, it's important for all the voices, but that's going to be our focus right now. Here's a tendency tone. The leading tone, A sharp, must resolve up by step to the tonic. And we want that. We want a B, D, and our last note, F, which is another common tone held there in the alto voice. Sorry, altos, not the most interesting line, but you know, that's pretty common for alto parts. All right, now for the predominant here, the 2-6-5. This is a C sharp, E, G, B chord. We've got the C sharp, we have the E, now we need the G and the B. Look at this, awesome. We have another opportunity for a common tone. Good, smooth voice leading. And then we just want that G up here. So seventh chords, we have a tendency tone in all seventh chords, and that's the seventh of the chord, and wants to resolve down by step eventually. So we'll keep that in mind that the B in this chord is actually a tendency tone and wants to resolve down by step. But we're moving through this cadential 6-4 chord. In fact, I'm going to write that. It's a cadential 6-4 chord. Has the same doubling rules as any other 6-4 chord, but it has some voice leading that we want to consider here. Okay, so This is a 6/4 chord. A 6 above the F is a D. A 4 is a B. So we've got this 6 above the bass. Remember, we want to double the bass with all 6/4 chords. And so I'm going to give that to the alto because it's so close to that F. And then we want a 4 above the bass, which gives us that B. Okay, so here we are, the cadential 6/4 chord, and we have like some pretty typical voice leading. The notes of the cadential 6/4 chord above the bass like to move down by step into the 5/7. So let's try to get everything to move just smoothly down by step into the 5/7. We'll see. We've got the C up here, so F, C. We need an A sharp actually. So we'll put that right here in the tenor, and then an E, the 7th of the chord, and that can be in the alto. All right, 5/7 has two tendency tones. It has the leading tone, which is the A sharp, and that moves up by step to the tonic, and then the 7th chord, the 7th of the chord, the E, moves down by step. And there we go. We are done here. You might notice that in that last chord, we don't have a 5th. That is okay. It's called an incomplete chord, and when you leave out a note, like the 5th is actually a really good note to leave out because it doesn't change the quality of the chord. Awesome. So we are done here with the voice leading. Now that we've done all this, let's take a listen to it and see if all of this stuff we've done has made some good music. If this video is helpful for you, be sure to subscribe because I'm going to be releasing a video every week on a different music theory concept, working through some more of the AP Music Theory exam questions, or maybe even just analyzing some music. And hopefully, if you're just interested and curious about music, you're going to get those videos by subscribing. All right, let's check it out. See you next video.